Muri Zimbabwe kusangana kwatiri kuita zvekare nhasunoyu pano paBere TV kusangana kwatiri kuita musi wechitatu 25 February 2026. Muri Zimbabwe ishu iri kupisa, nhaurwa iri kupisa mazuva ano inyaya yebumbiro remutemo. Bumbiro remutemo ratarisana nekuvandudzwa, ratarisana nekuamendwa pasi pebill number 3 rine maproposals akasiyana-siyana ayo akanangana nekuda kuextenda temu yavaEmerson Mnangagwa. Ndo chikonzero chakaita kuti pange pachiitwa maamendments iwayaya. Pane mamwe maamendments, maproposed amendments ari kuda kuitwa pamutemo wenyika yeZimbabwe pasi pebhiri rakaprezentwa kudare remakurukota navaZiyambi. Chinangwa chikuru chakaita kuti pange paine nhaurwa kana kuti paine pfungwa dzekuvandudza bumbiro remutemo inyaya yeresolution number 1, resolution yebato reZANU-PF, resolution yakaadoptiwa kumusangano wakaitirwa kuBulawayo nekumusangano wakaitirwa kwaMutare gore rapera muna Oktoba. Mugore rapera bato reZANU-PF richienda konferensi iyi pakava nekukakatidzana, pakava nenhaurwa dzakasiyana-siyana dziri maringe nenyaya iyoyiyi. Naizvozvo panapa nhasunoyu tine mutapi wenhau akaita interview neChannel Africa nezuro manheru ari kutaura muono wake maererano nemaproposed amendments kusanganisira nekutsanangura maererano nenyaya yediaspora vote zvinorevei, uyezve nyaya ye1 man 1 vote, kureva kuti ari kutsanangura iye kuti zvese zviri kuitwa izvi zviri kunze kwemutemo. Regai tinzwe Jealous Mawarire achititsanangurira, achitaura panapa maererano nemaamendments ari kuitwa kubumbiro remutemo.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. All right, so help us understand the key difference that these amendments would make if the governing party were able to push this through. The idea that presidential terms are extended to 7 years, and also that the way that the president is voted for.
I think that would fundamentally change the electoral system. That would also fundamentally change the rights of the citizens to directly elect a president of their choice. Because if we change Section 92, subsection 3, so that the president is now no longer elected directly by the people and transfer that right to Parliament, what it effectively means is that we have disenfranchised more than 6 million registered voters in Zimbabwe. Those that only saw hope in their ability to elect a president of their choice after 5 years. So the changes that are being proposed here by Minister Ziyambi and his president, because the president chaired the cabinet which proposed those changes, have a net effect of going against the very foundational reasons why the War of Liberation was fought, which is universal suffrage. 1 man, 1 vote, they said at that time. They were not gender sensitive, but what it meant was that we were fighting to accord every Zimbabwean who is 18 and above and eligible to vote to directly vote for the president. And I've actually seen a lot of propaganda around this change, saying that the change will expedite ways to ensure that those that are in the diaspora can vote. That's a lie. Because what directly voting for the president meant was that the country during a presidential election means the country is one constituency. And when it becomes one constituency, it then even makes it easier for people that are in the diaspora to vote for the president. But if we transfer voting for the president to parliament, it means that those that cannot vote for parliamentarians therefore can also not indirectly vote for the president. The elections in Zimbabwe are based on constituencies, single member constituencies. And someone has to be registered in the constituency and at a particular polling station in order for them to vote. So it means that those that are in the diaspora, those that are outside Zimbabwe, cannot participate in voting for the president. And even if you want them to vote, or to vote for the MP, even if you want them to vote now, it is administratively difficult. But it is going to be worse if now the voting for the president is transferred to parliament, because one has to be in a constituency, a particular constituency, to vote for an MP, and that MP then would vote on your behalf, would vote for the president on your behalf. This is fundamentally against the principle of universal suffrage, the principle of one man, one vote, for which the liberation struggle was staged. And all this post-truth propaganda, the kind of propaganda that the minister and the proponents of the bill are pushing, that will reduce political violence if we change the electoral system, if we make the president to be elected by parliament. This is not based on any scientific evidence, because we still have a situation, we still have a system which elects 210 MPs through first past the post. And first past the post means winner takes all in those 210 constituencies. So what it effectively means is that if the general public can no longer elect a president, the presidential campaign, all the money that had been put on the presidential rallies, the presidential campaign, will now be concentrated on the 210 constituencies for the 210 directly elected members. And what that means is that is decentralization of violence. Decentralization of violence and availing of enough resources for the regime to violently force the electorate to vote for the 210 MPs, because these 210 MPs have now become so critical because they are the ones now who are going to vote for the president. So we are likely going to have increased violence in the 210 constituencies, because mind you, the same votes that are cast in the 210 constituencies determine the distribution of votes in order to elect senators. So the contestation in the 210 constituencies will become very intense, and therefore there will be a lot of violence in these elections, and we've actually said that. And what also it means is that the presidential election, which was never constricted by gerrymandering, because it considered the whole country as one constituency, will now be affected by gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is purposeful manipulation of electoral districts in order to create parliamentary majority. So what it means, if you are now electing a president through parliament, gerrymandering becomes very, very important, because once you manipulate electoral districts in order to gain parliamentary majority, you then have a cutting edge in the election of the president. So there will be more incentive to do gerrymandering. That's why you now see that they now, concomitantly, they now want to create a delimitation commission. A delimitation commission, creating a commission to do delimitation of constituencies only once in 10 years. It doesn't make sense for me unless otherwise this commission has other jobs to do. Then there are also other propositions that they are suggesting, like retaining the voter registration and keeping of the voters' roll to the Registrar General. What Zimbabweans should know is that the Registrar General is an employee of the Ministry of Home Affairs and Heritage. So what it means is that we are transferring voter registration and custody of the voters' roll from an independent commission created through Chapter 12 of the Constitution to an individual who is directly employed by the Ministry of Home Affairs and therefore under the minister, who is an appointee of the president. So effectively, we've shifted the custody of the voters' roll and the voter registration process to people who will be directly participating in elections, the minister and the president. And that's a regression, because that's one thing that the Constitution, the 2013 Constitution addressed, the creation of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and assigning it with voter registration and keeping of the voter register.
We'll talk about the Constitution shortly, but I am interested to know how the governing party and those that are pushing for this change have justified it. What are they saying is better about these changes that will make a difference to Zimbabweans?
They have actually created, in media studies, there's what is called the post-truth. What they have done is to create an old world order, a political order in Zimbabwe, where lies are propagated officially by the minister, by the state broadcasters, by government itself. A lie that the constitutional changes that they are doing do not require a referendum. We have seen propaganda machinery being deployed, and now we are being told there's a difference between term limit and time limit. But the Constitution is very clear in Section 328, subsection 1. It actually offers a definition of what a term limit is. And the Constitutional Court judgment in the matter between Mupumu and the Minister of Justice clearly states that Section 95 of the Constitution, which states that a president can only be in office for a 5-year term, is clearly defined. That Section 95 is clearly defined as a term limit provision in the Constitution through that judgment. The Constitutional Court has made a pronouncement that Section 95, subsection 2 is a term limit provision. But the proponents of the bill want to change that provision of the Constitution without going for a referendum. As demanded by the very same Section 328 of the Constitution. So that's a lie that they've created. They've also created a lie that electoral violence and political instability can be cured by increasing the presidential term from 5 years to 7 years. That's complete hogwash. What deals with political instability is ensuring that elections are held under free and fair conditions and presided over by an electoral management board that is impartial. And when everyone else, every citizen has the right to interrogate what is happening in their country. They exercise the same rights that are enshrined in Section 67 of the Constitution: the right to freely express themselves, the right to freely associate with whoever they want, the right to form political parties and be part of political groupings. Those are the rights that should obtain in an environment where free and fair elections are envisaged, and in an environment where political stability is aspired for. So this idea that we can
so I'm going to jump in there, Jealousy. Are there members of ZANU-PF itself that are saying we can't do this?
Precisely, there are a lot. We are told even two cabinet ministers registered their disquiet over the proposed amendments, especially the amendment to change the direct election of the president and arrogate the right to choose a president to parliament. That was resisted. The attempts to whittle down the constitutional powers of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, it was also resisted. So that actually shows. In fact, if you look at the announcements that are being made now by the ZANU-PF chairperson, Honorable Mushinguri Gashiri, you wonder what kind of a democratic institution ZANU-PF is, because you are told that there was no objection to the proposals, even in cabinet. There was no objections at the ZANU-PF conference in October. But the apparatus that they used to measure that there was no opposition to that is that no one raised disquiet publicly. But we know that there are reprisals if someone stands up. The most effective way of gauging public support for these changes is to subject the changes to a referendum, and that's what people are calling for. They can go to parliament, they can do whatever they want, but eventually let the people be the final arbiters. Subject to the changes to a national referendum as demanded by the Constitution. It's not a big ask, and that's what we are saying. If these changes are popular, if these changes are good for the people of Zimbabwe, subject them to a referendum, and that's all what the people of Zimbabwe want, so that the people will have a final say on whether they want the changes or whether they don't. But what I have gathered myself, even from ordinary members of ZANU-PF, is that people want to participate in directly electing their president because they feel that the whole objective of the liberation struggle was to accord them the right to choose their leaders through universal suffrage. We don't want our rights to vote to be subjugated to parliament. That's not what the War of Liberation was fought for. And there is absolutely no reason why it should be, because arguments that it brings stability, they do not tie with the historical realities in Zimbabwe. Between 1980 and 1987, we were using the same we are using proportional representation. We are using parliament to choose a prime minister. But that period, Zimbabwe went through the most unfortunate and the darkest part of our history in terms of political violence, which others actually call a genocide, where more than 20,000 of our people perished in politically motivated violence. So we cannot go back to a system which gave birth to calls for one-party state, to a genocide in terms of the Burundi.
Jealousy, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, because of time. But thank you so much indeed.
Boria Zimbabwe ndo mashoko kubva kuna Jealous Mawarire anova mutape wenavo ari murwi wekodzero dzeveruzhinji ari kutaura panapa maererano nekumbunyikidzwa kwava kuda kuita veruzhinji kumbunyikidzwa zvekare kwava kuda kuitwa bumbiro remutemo. Tichaona mahachi wamuka sei, tinochipangura wamuka sei. Tinotenda varume nekuva nesu kwamaita pano paBire TV. Tanga tina Jealous Mawarire uyo akataura neChannel Africa nezuro achitsanangura maererano nezviri kuda kuitwa kubumbiro remutemo, achipa muonero wake kuti zvese zviri kuda kuitwa izvi hazviko nekuda kwekuti zvinofanirwa kuitwa nenzira yekuremekedza veruzhinji. Referendum ndo yaari kutaura kuti vazhinji ndo yavari kuti ngaiitwe kana bato reZANU-PF navaEmerson Mnangagwa vachiti ivo vanodi neruzhinji. Tinokutendai muri eZimbabwe nekuva nesu kwamaita panguva dzino. Ngatisanganei zvekare muzuva ranhasi panhau dzakasiyana-siyana dzatichazenge tichikupakurirai pano paBire TV Zimbabwe.